everyone, this is Mindy Eggen and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you some embossing folder techniques. These are really fun and easy to do, and embossing folders are such a great thing to have in your stash because you can use them as a focal point on your card or add as a subtle interest to your background. I'll be combining them with ink blending, stencils, and a die cut card front. I'll do the techniques in the beginning of the video, and then I'll put the cards together later on. These embossing folders come from the Gina Designs May release, and I also want to show you the stamp sets that are also a part of the May release as well. The first one I want to show you is called Succulent Spray. It is a large 6x8 stamp sets with these gorgeous sentiments and this beautiful floral arrangement on it. I used this one quite a bit in the video today, and there is also a coordinating die for that large arrangement. We have Fearless Flyers with these beautiful flying birds. I can't wait to color these up. There's also some branches, and you can stamp the leaves separately. There's also coordinating dies that you can purchase separately for this as well. We have Spring Bouquet, which is also a large 6x8 stamp set. Gorgeous scripty font on here for your sentiments. 2 floral images, and both of which have a coordinating die for them. This is really great if you love to color because it has those nice open petals. Then we have Grand Gentleman, and this one is great for those men in your life. We have in-law, son, stepfather, you could do nephew, uncle, lots of great coordinating sentiments to go with those. Then we have Hole-in-One. So if you have someone in your life that loves golf, this is going to be the perfect stamp set for them. And it can also go along with the Grand Gentleman stamp set if you have a man in your life who loves golf as well. Now there are coordinating dies that go with this set too that you can purchase separately. And then last but not least is this beautiful set that's called The Best Things in Life. I love that circle print at the top, and I actually plan on doing a video with that, a really quick and easy card, and that fabulous kind of paint swoosh at the bottom along with the beautiful floral image. Now on to our headliner for the night. So here are the 4 brand new embossing folders from Gina Designs. I am so excited that she has brought this into her store. I'm going to show you each of these individually, but I'll only use a few of them in my video today. This first one is called Tapestry. You may recognize this design from a stamp set, so it has a similar design, but you have the tapestry design all over in the background. Next we have Petite Flourish. It kind of has these like vines and leaves. It's just a very delicate and beautiful design. Then we have Lattice, which is great for putting behind any of your floral images, or if you ink it up just right with some brown ink, you could turn it into ice cream cones, which would be a fun idea. And then we have Swiss Dots, and we know Gina, she loves her Swiss Dots, and I used this one a couple times in the video today. Now these folders are not super thick. They are not your 3D embossing folder, and everybody's sandwich might be different, so you're going to want to test this out with your die cutting machine. But here is what I found worked well for me. So I have my base plate with my Platinum 6. I have a metal shim. I placed the heavyweight cardstock into my embossing folder. I have 2 shims of white cardstock and then my top plate. You may not necessarily need that shim, especially if you have a heavier weight cardstock, but I just found it really gave me a fabulous impression. So once I ran that through, I'll open up the folder and just check out that amazing detail on this. So like I said, try it a couple times with or without shims, but this is what I have found works well for me. So not only do we have this gorgeous impression with all the detail on the front, but you flip it over and you have that impressed design as well. So I'm going to do another one here, and this one is using the Swiss Dots. Now sometimes if you have heavier cardstock, you might want to spritz it a little bit with water. That's normally to prevent cracking of the cardstock, but even when I didn't spritz my cardstock, I didn't find I had any cracking. So that's totally up to you. Here's the Swiss Dots. I'm going to go through each one using white cardstock just to show you what it looks like. Here is the Lattice one, and I'll flip that over. You can see the embossed areas. And then the last one here is the Petite Flourish, which has these very dainty kind of vine type of design on it. I also want to point out that these embossing folders are a larger size so that you can make 5x7 cards. Maybe you can make some mini slimline cards. So I did want to point that out, that these are not the typical smaller sized embossing folders. They are a larger size, which gives you more options. Now I'm going to work on some backgrounds for you, and I'm starting with ink blending first. This is layering white cardstock from Gina Designs, and I cut it to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I started by blending on one end with Lucky Clover. Then I'm coming in with Turquoise Sea, making sure to overlap that Lucky Clover. And then I'm going to flip this and come in at the other end with Wild Lilac. And just going back over that, letting that kind of blend in together. Now, if it does look a little off at first, just give it time to dry. Let your ink dry, and I promise it'll smooth out. So this first technique I'm going to show you is using my stencil with an embossing folder. So that's why I started with an ink blended background. Then I'm bringing in the Stencil thick brush, which is one of my favorites, and I have that held down on my Make Art station with my magnets, and I'm going to come back over my blended areas using my stencil and those same colors. So the Wild Lilac, then the Turquoise Sea, and then coming in with that Lucky Clover. So this is going to stand out just a little bit. I think combining stencils, ink blending, and embossing folders is such a fun way to make a card, and it really is pretty quick and easy to do. So after I have that blended, I'm going to peel this up to reveal my background, and then I'm going to place this inside of the Swiss Dots embossing folder. I decided to go with Swiss Dots. Like I said, this is going to be such a well-used embossing folder because it's such a subtle design. It's not fighting with that thick brush design. So I ran that through my Platinum 6 using that sandwich that I mentioned earlier, and now I have this really fun Swiss Dots pattern over that stenciled area. This might be one of my favorite backgrounds. I'll turn that background into a card a little later in the video, but next I want to show you another fun technique that you can use your embossing folders for. And I'm using Lucky Clover ink because that's what was sitting on my desk. Now I'm feeling my embossing folder to decide which side I wanted to do this on. You could really do this to either side, but I'm finding the side of the embossing folder that is more of a smooth surface where the design is kind of into the embossing folder. The other side is more raised. And I'm just taking my ink pad and I'm just smearing that all over that top portion of my embossing folder. Then I'm going to take a piece of cardstock, lay that down on the clean side. I'm going to fold this shut and run that through my Platinum 6. So this is going to press all of that ink into that open space, and everything else is raised up and white. And this turned out amazing. This next card is also doing some stenciling that I'm going to do an embossing folder over afterwards, and I wanted to try it with more of an image. So this is the Bold Bouquet stencil, and I'm starting off with medium carnation ink, starting in the center of that large floral and working my way out, kind of leaving a little bit of white space. I'm going to be bringing in green later on for the leaves, and I don't want those two colors to mix because it'll create brown. So I'm just very carefully adding that pink to all the floral parts of my stencil. Then I'm going to bring in light spruce for the leaves, and I had started off at first with my larger blending brushes, kind of going over the outer edges, and that worked fine, but there are some smaller areas I had to get into, and to do that, I will be using my mini blending brushes. Those are really great for trying to get into those small areas. There were some spots that I ended up overlapping my pink a little bit and it created brown, but afterwards, I don't even think I noticed or remembered that it was there because it was so minimal. Now this stencil has a lot of fine and delicate areas, especially in the leaves, and previously when I had used this, I had sprayed it with Pixie Spray, and even after I washed it, that Pixie Spray, which is just really a low-tack adhesive, still left some stickiness on there, so it's holding down those kind of delicate portions of the leaves. Even though I have my magnets there, that Pixie Spray is really helping hold those areas down for me. So I can reveal my background, and then I'm going to place this piece of cardstock into the Swiss Dots embossing folder. Like I said, this one's going to get a lot of love from me. So I'll run that through my machine, and then I'm going to set this off on the side and finish this card later on. Now, one thing to keep in mind with embossing folders is if you want to do any die cutting, which I'm doing here, I'm die cutting sea glass cardstock using my master layouts too. And then I grabbed a circle die and I'm die cutting that out of the center. If you're doing any die cutting, you want to do that first, because if you try and run your design through after you did an embossing folder, it's going to flatten that out. So here I ran that panel through with the Tapestry embossing folder. Now I can work on finishing up these cards for you. So I'll start with this one that I just left off on. I'm using a sentiment from the Succulent Spray stamp set. These are so beautiful. It's kind of the classic Gina sentiment designs, like that Enjoy that's got the swoopies on there. And I line that up in the center of where I'm going to have my opening be on the front of the card. I'm inking up that sentiment with Obsidian black ink, and I'm going to stamp it twice because it is a brand new stamp. I hadn't used it yet. And then I placed foam tape behind this embossed panel, and I'm going to line that up over where my sentiment is. So if I did a good job, I should have even margins all around my card front. Now to finish off the design of this card, I thought it would be really pretty to have a small arrangement of flowers kind of down in a corner. And to do that, I'm using that watercolor floral ephemera pack. You could stamp out some flowers and leaves, but I just happen to have some of these left. I'm running out of the ephemera pack. I love these so much. They're so great to make your cards just go by really quick. So I'm adding all of those pieces just with a tape runner, and then I flipped that arrangement over and I added foam squares behind it, and then I can place that on the front of my card. So that will finish off my first card. Now the next card I'm going to finish off is using that thick brush stencil. I had already trimmed it down to 3 3/4 by 5 inches, and I'm going to put it on a A2 size white card front. And I'm just going to add a circle with a sentiment to the front. I'm going to keep the design totally focused on the embossing folder and my stenciling. So here I have a circle die cut from white cardstock, once again using a sentiment from that Succulent Spray stamp set. I'm going to pop it onto the front of my card with some foam squares. And my blended panel, I also added some foam tape behind it to give it a little bit of dimension. Now for the rest of my cards, this is where I used the Bold Bouquet stencil, and I just added a sentiment from the Birthday Bash stamp set. I stamped it in black ink onto white cardstock and trimmed that out with the coordinating die. Here's a look at that card I finished up earlier where I had used the ephemera pack and the Succulent Spray stamp set. Lots of fabulous sentiments on there. Here's another look at that background I created with the thick brush stencil and Swiss Dots embossing folder and the sentiment from the Succulent Spray stamp set. And this last card I finished off, which I really like how this turned out. I used the U caps die for that large U, die cut out of a grass green cardstock, and then I used a smaller sentiment from the incentive set for May, which is called Pretty Posy. And there we have it, 4 really quick and easy ideas you can use with embossing folders, which are super affordable and great staples to have in your collection. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I will have all of the supplies listed down below in the video description and over on my blog as well. Thank you so much for joining me today. Here are a few other videos I think you might enjoy.